Hey guys, I'm Melhorn. Are you considering using cut bait on your next catfishing trip, but don't quite know where to start? Well, you're going to want to watch this video because I got some important tips for you. All right guys, so if you're new to fishing for catfish, you've probably been looking up bait. What kind of bait to use? What's the best bait? Well, a lot of people will tell you that cut bait is the best thing to use. Some kind of fish from the water that you're fishing. Now you can use these fish live, that's fine, but most people that are fishing for catfish want to cut it up. Two reasons. One, the most important being that it spreads more scent. A cut up bait is open up, the juices, the blood, the oils from the inside of the fish are able to spread out through the water column. The other thing is, it actually gives you more bait. If you're using this bait live or whole, you got one piece of bait. You take this piece of bait and you cut it into pieces, you've got multiple pieces of bait. And that's what we're gonna go over here, is how to cut bait. People say cut bait, what does that mean? Do you just cut a hole in it, you cut a slice in it? Well, you can. There are people who will take a whole bait like this and make cuts in the side of it just to open it up, just to get some scent out, to get some blood out, to get some oil out. That's fine. What I'm gonna show you is how to cut these baits up into pieces, fillets, and also, most importantly, is how to hook some of these baits. Because if you hook these baits wrong, it can present all kinds of problems. All right, guys, I got a couple of dead baits here. They're easier to work with than live baits because they're not flopping around everywhere. These are some white perch. They're out of our lake. They've been in the cooler overnight. One thing I would suggest is having a couple of knives actually helps. This is one I've got from Hooker's Terminal Tackle. It's got a serrated edge on it. It is great for cutting straight through a piece of bait, cutting through the backbone. This one I like. This is a fillet knife. This is just a little El Cheapo I got back at Gander Mountain when they were open. These are better for making the fillet cut. So on this big piece, I'm going to show you how to make a fillet cut first of all. Basically what you're doing is cutting the meat off the side of the fish. Depending on the fish, you're just going to cut down till you feel that backbone. Then you're going to turn that knife and run it down that backbone, down the fish. Boom. There you go. You got a fillet off of it. Now, it's going to take you a little bit of practice. The first few times you try cutting that fillet, you're going to cut through the backbone. You're going to hack it. It takes a little bit of feel. But the great thing about using a fillet knife is you've got a little more feel with it. You can bend it, you can turn it, you can get it on its side when you start to hit that backbone. So don't worry, you're going to mess a few up, but that's how you make the cut. You've got this nice piece of meat here. Now you can fish that piece whole, just as it is, or you could cut it into multiple pieces depending on what kind of fish you're fishing for. You'll take this piece, flip it over, same thing, cut down right to that backbone, and then you got to be able to bend the knife. That is where having a nice fillet knife comes in handy. So all you got is just that backbone. Now some people will fish this piece here. So in effect, you could have one, two, and what I do is I cut the head off. This is where the serrated edge of this knife really proves itself. Boom. Cuts through all that bone. You could literally have 4 pieces of bait, cut this into multiple pieces, and you could have 4, 5, 6 pieces of bait depending on how small you want to make them. So me personally, this piece here, I chunk out. I'm not a big fan of it. Probably catch some fish on it. For some reason, I don't have a lot of luck. If you guys want to fish it, that's fine. Nothing else, use it for some chum to get some scent through the water. So you're left with these 3 pieces. Now, like I said, a lot of times I will just cut these into a smaller piece. If I'm using some bigger pieces, I'll leave that like that. Now, another easy way to cut these baits up is, and this is where the serrated blade comes in, I always cut the tail off and chunk the tail. Why do I chunk the tail? Well, that little fin back there that powers the fish can flap around in the water, cause the bait to turn, twist, swim funny. It's kind of a pain, so I always get rid of that. Then what I do is I'll cut the head off. Head, great piece of bait. Love using heads, caught a lot of good fish on them. And then with these chunks, you can cut that into some smaller pieces, leave it big, it's up to you. I leave the gut pocket in. Some people will cut this gut pocket out because they don't like that little pocket that is created there because it catches water and causes the bait to turn. I go either way. I could really care less. I usually just leave the gut pocket in. Now, the most important part when it comes to using cut bait is how you're going to hook these baits. It actually makes a difference. One thing is, we'll start with the head. Head's a big old chunk of bait. A couple of different ways people will rig these things. Some will hook it through this part up here. And if you're fishing a vertical presentation, that would probably work. Probably wouldn't have a problem with that. I do a lot of drifting and I'm pulling baits through the water. And what I like to do is hook it through the mouth. I go through the bottom, up through the top jaw. Basically what this is doing in effect is pinching the mouth shut. Because I'll show you on this bigger piece, if you take that one off, if I just hook it through the top part, like a lot of people do with a live bait, where its mouth will still open, it can still breathe. As this bait goes through the water, that mouth will open up. And as it does that, it catches water, starts to turn, starts to tumble. So that is why I personally like to go through bottom part there, through that lip, hanging on there like that. So that's the way to hook on that bait. On these bigger pieces, let's say we got a piece of cut bait, and you can use, guys, as big a piece as you want fishing. All depends on what you've got in the water you're fishing. A lot of people just go straight through, okay? If you look at it from the top, oh, another important thing. See that right there? That's a scale on the tip of that hook. Make sure you get those scales off of those hooks. It will prevent a hookup. A lot of people will go straight through like that. Sometimes what can happen, depending on this bait, it can roll back into it. You will have your hook roll back into your bait, and obviously that's going to prevent a hookup. One little trick that works pretty good, if you hook these things through at an angle. So instead of going straight through like that, you do it at an angle like that. So that can help with the rotation of this bait. Get it through at an angle like that. Hopefully you can see that there on top. And it seems to help with some of the hook rolling back into the bait, because it can be a problem. Big pieces of bait, I usually hook them up toward the end. I go through here. And what I like to do, you can leave it hanging like this. Remember, with circle hooks, guys, you want to leave it exposed. I try to hook it so that that point is not going to roll back into it on this end. Another good trick to help out with that is doubling the hook back through the bait. Boom, like that. That will seems to help with that hook rolling back into it. Again, get all the stuff off your point, and it can create a little bit of flutter with the bait doing that. So that's kind of the way I do mine there. Gets kind of a double hook. You got some skin pulling on it there, kind of a little more skin than you would normally. Same thing on these. I try to double hook through these. Going through them one time's okay. If you got a small piece of bait, it may be hard to come back through these. But if you can, you know, get back through there. Boom. You got a piece like that. If you're laying that on the bottom, that's perfect. If you got it up dragging it, you might want it a little more streamlined, but those will work great. There you go, folks. Listen, there is no real wrong way to do this. The tips I've given you are things that I do that work very good for the way I fish. And it's just stuff I picked up on over the years. You can't really mess this up, so don't worry about duplicating exactly what I did. It's just some things to keep in mind that will hopefully help you catch a few more fish on your next trip. Well, folks, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Here are a couple more videos that I think you're gonna like. I'd watch that one and then that one. No, do that one first and then that one. I don't know. Just watch them both. They're both good.